Welcome back to our period intermission segment where we're taking a look back at some past Flyers and Flyer hockey history. And today we're pleased to be joined by Chad Lundeen. Welcome, Chad.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Chad, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about your role that you play professionally today and with the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, great. I'm in my 25th season here with the Minnesota Vikings. I got started way back in '98 when I was a graduate assistant in the athletic department for Mankato. I had just finished up playing hockey there and needed to do an internship for my sports management program. And the Vikings were right there having training camp. So I got started with them and never left. As soon as I was done with school, I started full time with them. And I've grown from team operations and community relations to taking over the turf departments, as well as buildings and grounds and security. So I'm now the vice president of operations and facilities for the Vikings, and I oversee those four departments. And really what our job is, we handle the logistics for the team to hopefully keep the team running smoothly. Our motto is we try to do the little things so that the players and coaches can focus on football. And that's our contribution on how to help the team win games and just feel like a part of that team. I'm really lucky because I've been able to take a career path and combine it with a passion. And I think when you can do that anytime, it's probably a recipe for success. Many times we work long hours between, during our season when it starts for training camp all the way through the end of the season and 7 days a week. And I don't even realize that I'm working every day because it's just something that I get up and do. I don't look at it as a job, right? I have to sometimes be reminded of that, like, hey, you've worked a lot of days in a row here, my wife might mention. But I guess I would say, our goal here is to try to win a Super Bowl. We're continuing to do that every year. That's the goal, to keep building toward that and bring a Super Bowl here to Minnesota. And then really just want to touch on, like, over the 25 years, I've been involved in some crazy stories, some crazy wins and losses, some great joys and a lot of tears. From being involved with the dome collapse and trying to figure out how to play games there. In the meantime, being stranded in Philly to play a game on a Tuesday night, the sad, unfortunate passing of Corey Stringer, to then some great things like, Adrian Peterson running for 296 yards in a game, and Randy Moss's career, and the Minneapolis Miracle, and now Justin Jefferson, what he's doing, and, being on the airplane with the guys and having fun on the way home after big wins, and Kirk O'Chains with his shirt off and dancing this year was a lot of fun. I've also been really fortunate to be involved with some building projects. We're really kind of lifetime legacy type deals of the design and build of US Bank Stadium here downtown Minneapolis, as well as our new practice facility, Twin Cities Orthopedic Performance Center. So it's been fun projects to be a part of.
Oh, I'm sure. So just to give people a kind of a point of reference, when you started working with the Vikings, who was the head coach at the time?
So Denny Green was actually the one who hired me back in 1998. And another fun fact is my very first day of work was for rookie camp, for mini camp that we had in the spring. And that was Randy Moss's first day with the club as well.
Oh,
so we go way back. We always say that, he was a more valuable draft pick, but I had a longer career. That's kind of how we joke back and forth.
Nice.
Yeah.
So do you still keep in contact with people like Randy Moss and some of those past Viking greats today?
Yeah. Not everybody, obviously, but there's some guys that you hit it off with and connect a little bit better. And certainly like, Dante Culpepper I was close with, and Randy Moss. And now you see Randy at some Monday night games when he's doing coverage for broadcast things where you can connect and stay involved. And then, as they come back and do some appearances for us as alumni, some of them are getting, inducted into the Ring of Honor for the Vikings. So it's a good chance to connect with Jared Allens and
Right.
Kevin Williams and those kind of guys when they come back and support each other in those honors that they're getting.
That's very cool. Very cool. Well, Chad, you mentioned that you were involved in the kind of the development and the planning for US Bank Stadium and the new Vikings training facility, but you had some early on practice with some facility planning and development as well. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Growing up as a kid, we played outdoor hockey in Little Falls, and we were part of that age group where a bunch of parents and community leaders were fundraising and working to try to open a new indoor arena for us with the Exchange Arena. And so we actually got to be hands-on with the fundraising portion of it, but also like doing things like building the boards and laying the pipe for the artificial ice portion of the building, and then got to play in the inaugural game at the Bantam right before the high school game, the very first day that it was open for play. So a great experience for us.
That's really neat. And so talk a little bit about playing in that in those outdoor rinks, those outdoor games for those first. You must have been about 8th grade, 9th grade then when the Exchange Arena opened. So you had a lot of outdoor ice time. What was that?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, it was unique, but it was kind of a sense of pride that we took too, because this was the era of flyer hockey well before we were competitive and playing in state tournaments or anything like that. So I've got memories of watching the high school games, standing along the boards outside, as well as being a little bugger. 4 years old, I started skating, where your dad introduces you to hockey and just see if you like it or not at the North End rink, outside. And we kind of joked in our family because my dad spent some of his high school years living in Canada, in Mankato, Quebec, where he met my mom. So we would say, I must have had a little bit of hockey in my blood right from the start, because once I was introduced to it, just took off and loved it and then never wanted to stop. So we had, we played in, organized association games out there, but also pickup games that you would just call your buddies and organize that part of it as well. So it was unique, but it was cool. It was fun. And kids today probably wouldn't understand that in between periods, you pick up a shovel and help scrape the ice, and then you go to the next period. So it's a little bit different. And, the dads would be a part of resurfacing late at night and maintaining the rinks outdoors.
Sure.
So it was a cool experience.
So was your dad the one that introduced you to hockey then?
He was. I think I was about 4 years old when he first took me over there and showed me. And, we would watch the North Stars on TV at home and the Minnesota Gophers for college hockey. But that's kind of how I got my start.
That sounds like a lot of fun. So your dad coached you a lot then growing up too? Was he involved that way?
Yeah, he did. If you're talking about influential coaches in my life, you have to start with my dad. I was really lucky to have my dad and my uncle pretty much coach me every year through youth hockey all the way through Bantams. And, it's a cool thing for a kid, but then also now that I'm a dad and coaching my kids, I understand it from the father's perspective of just being able to pass along your love for the game to the next generation and to be involved with your kid's life like that is pretty cool.
So talk a little bit about coaching your kids' team. You have a couple of daughters that play hockey. Tell us about that experience a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. We live in Excelsior these days, and we play hockey out of Chaskachan program. And
Okay.
I've got 2 girls that play. They're currently 9 and 13. And at one point, a few years back, my son played as well. So we had 3 kids in hockey, and I coached all 3 teams. And life is a little bit chaotic, but it's fun chaos. And you just race from one rink to the next. And sometimes you're having other families help bring your kids back and forth. And mom's got you here today and dad's got you over here tomorrow, and all these different things. But it's been a great experience. I really haven't played for many years. I'm on the ice quite a bit just with the kids coaching.
Sure.
But between work and kids and their activities and trying to coach them, my days of playing old man hockey are on hold for a little while probably. Sure. And get back into that later in life, hopefully.
So Chad, talk a little bit about, you mentioned that you're coaching for your daughter's teams, but talk a little bit about how playing youth hockey today is different from when you played it back in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's very different with just the amount of opportunities that are out there and how much you play year round nowadays. And I tell my kids, it's really ironic, and we're at the opposite ends of the spectrum, because I played outdoor hockey only when we could make an outdoor rink. And now they have, I think I tell them they've played more hockey in their life as a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old than I did in my entire career put together, my whole life. It's just so many more ice touches and opportunities, right down to the unique experience they have of playing or attending a school named Breakaway Academy. My wife teaches there and the girls attend it. So as a part of their curriculum and their day, they've got their classroom segment, but they've also got an hour of off ice training, as well as 90 minutes of on ice training, right there at school every day. So it's a lot of touches that they get. You hope they appreciate it. And the coaching that they're getting is from former NHL players, as well as former college players. And so it's just top-notch program. And I hope they can appreciate what they've got there in that opportunity to participate in that school every day.
It sounds amazing and like a really unique and fun opportunity for if you're a hockey loving kid, which I'm certain your daughters must be in order to commit themselves to that kind of training.
Yeah, they love it. And, I continually ask them questions to see, is there any kind of burnout coming in? Their passion has just grown for the game the more they've gotten involved with this school. So I look back and go, I wish there was something like that when I was growing up, for sure.
All right. Well, let's go back to your high school days playing as a player for a little bit. I'm assuming you probably played in that very first game at the Exchange Arena. What was that like?
Yeah,
What
it
do
was
you
really
remember
neat. It
about
was
that?
almost like, yeah, we were bantams. And so we got to play right before the varsity game, and it was kind of like almost like the JV game would have been. We didn't have that program then. So to be able to be out there and ripping around in a building that was excited with a lot of people in there, cheering you on, and just also a sense of pride of like, hey, we helped make this happen as far as the fundraising and getting our hands dirty building it. It was a unique experience for sure.
So talk about those high school years playing. You played for two coaches, John Wagner and John Majurley. I think Wagner was your coach your freshman and sophomore year, and Majurley your junior and senior year. What are some of your memories of playing for those guys?
Yeah, great experiences with both of those coaches. For John Majurley, he had just recently finished playing college hockey himself and was a pretty young guy, so there wasn't that much age difference between us. And so he was able to bring a perspective of some college hockey experience to our program and really kind of guide and mentor us. And he became kind of a big brother for me and really a lifelong friend. So we learned a lot from John in those years.
It's great to have those connections and mentors like that. So is there any game or event that really just stands out to you from those high school days?
There is for sure. And I think it was my first 3 years of high school hockey. It was the first 2 years were a one class tournament. And then my junior year, they were switching to really experimenting with a 2-class where they, at the end of the season, they voted which class they thought you should be in. So we essentially were playing in what we call the big schools class the first 3 years. And then my senior year, we were playing in the lower schools or the smaller schools. So it was like the first time you really had a legitimate shot at, hey, we could make it to the state tournament if we play well here for a few games.
Sure.
And so in 1993, in the section semifinals against Mora Hinckley, I believe it was, they were the higher seeded team. And we played in a game that everybody who was involved, whether you were there as a coach, a player, or somebody who happened to be a spectator, probably will never forget it, because we were down 2-8 going into the third period, which at that time it was 15-minute periods. And the rules for a 6-goal lead mean it's running time. And oh, by the way, we just happened to be shorthanded starting the period. So for all intents and purposes, the game was over. It was just, they're going to run out the clock and they were kicking our butts. Except we scored a shorthanded goal 12 seconds into the period. And it was one of those things where you just, the momentum switched so quickly, and things got rolling, and they just couldn't stop it. It was in the St. Paul Coliseum, so it's a big building
Oh,
with
sure.
two small communities playing in it. But it
Yeah.
was section games where the big schools then came in and played right after you. So as our game was taking place, it just kept filling up more and more and more. And even these people who didn't know the two teams involved were watching this going, hey, check this out. Like, this team was down 6 goals at the start of this period. And then all of a sudden it was, down by 4, down by 3, down by 2. Hey, we really think we can do this.
Yeah.
The momentum swung, and it's just something you'll never feel like you'll be a part of something like that again.
Yeah.
So one of my teammates, classmates, line mates, Chris Thomas, scored 5 goals, and they were headlining the news with this kind of stuff. So it was things we still get together and talk about today, right?
Yeah, I can't imagine in the day and age of social media what kind of buzz that kind of a game would have created across the state. That's a really cool story.
And we've always said you'll never see another game like that. But then, I also watched a game in the NFL this year where the Vikings came back from 33 points down
Right.
at halftime. So it was one of those kind of things where you see it just once the momentum starts rolling, there was no
Yeah.
stopping.
No
It was pretty
stopping
cool.
it. That's right. So you went straight from high school to playing for Mankato's, what at the time was known as Mankato State. Now they're Minnesota State Mankato, I think is what they go by. But
Yeah, that's right.
but talk about that experience of going to Mankato and some of the experiences that you got to have down there.
Yeah, sure. As I was finishing up high school, the plan was to play golf. I had just, qualified for the state tournament in golf my senior year, and my game was coming around. So that was the plan. I was going to play golf in college until, that summer got there, and I just had this feeling like I don't think I'm quite done with hockey in my life yet. And so I started talking to the coaches down in Mankato about potentially walking on and trying out. And so they were open to that. They were very clear about if that's the case, then you will not play golf as well. You're not going to play both here, which I kind of had the idea that I wanted to do. But I made the team that fall, and they said I was done with golf. And so my hockey career continued. And like you said, it was a Division II program that they had attempted to go Division one time earlier and had a setback. But I knew then that was in the works, and they were still trying to go to Division I. So that intrigued me as well to try to get into that level of hockey. And I made it. So then they had me redshirt my first year because I was probably a good candidate that should have played a year or two of junior hockey. But again, coming out of Little Falls, I didn't know much about that at the time. And so I just kind of went straight from high school. So that redshirt year was a good opportunity for me to still develop and grow because I wasn't a very big kid, and then work on those skills. And then I think we were officially Division I for our a full schedule of Division I for 96-97 season. In 94, we opened a brand new building down there, the Mankato Civic Center at the time. So that was cool to play in that inaugural game down there, and just really a great experience to be in that community, part of that university at that time, where everybody got behind this new Division I hockey program in the community there. It was a lot of fun, good time to be a part of it. And then I hadn't really left Little Falls or Minnesota very much in my life at that point. And so by playing college hockey, it really took me across the country playing, get experience of seeing and playing at West Point with Army, and then Air Force out at the in Colorado there, as well as like traveling up to Alaska and Notre Dame. That was one of our first big Division I wins, was against Notre Dame. We went in there and beat them in overtime. So a lot of cool things there. And now, once our playing career is done, it's been fun to follow that program and watch them really come into national prominence. And I think the last 10 years we've got the most wins in college hockey, and then playing, advancing into the Frozen Four the last 2 years. Right. And maybe the year before that, we all felt like that was the most talented team, number one in the country and rolling toward the tournament. And then COVID shut everything down, and they didn't get a chance to play.
Right.
So it's been pretty cool to watch them.
Chad, tell us a little bit about your coach at Mankato State.
Yeah, I don't think you can talk about Mankato hockey without mentioning Don Brose, who is really, the godfather of Maverick hockey down there. He took a program that he started. It was an outdoor club program way back in the day, and he grew it to a sanctioned NCAA Division III, Division II, and then Division I, and eventually got them into the WCHA, which is at the time the premier conference in all of college hockey. So he's now retired, but he's still involved. If you go down to Mankato, you'll see him at the games. And even last spring, as the Mavericks were competing for the national championship, there he is in the stands watching this program that he started. So pretty cool to know him and be a part of that program that he got rolling.
Yeah, they've had a lot of success, and it's fun to see that the big power isn't the U of M so much anymore. I mean, the U's got a great team, but the Mankatos and the St. Clouds and the Midgies and UMD have really started to rise over the last 10 to 15 years to really make this an exciting place to watch college hockey in the state of Minnesota.
You're right. There's a lot of good college hockey teams here, and Mankato has been able to do it, like you said, without necessarily getting the big first round draft picks that you might see at Michigan and Minnesota every year. And they've done it with kids coming out of junior hockey that are a little bit older, a little more mature, and every one of those kids that comes into that program is a good, strong skater. So they'll come at you and forecheck hard and make it just tough to play against.
Yeah,
so they're down a little bit this year. They lost a lot of firepower, but they're still very competitive and fun to watch.
They are fun to watch. So when you were in college, then is hockey a year-round business in terms of training, or how would you spend your summers away from school and all that?
Yep, good question. It really was a year-round deal, but in the spring we would have workouts of weights and explosive type workouts and things. But spring was your downtime, and then summers you would skate on your own, whether it was back home or somewhere with a college league. But it certainly isn't like it is today. I didn't have the knowledge that I see my kids getting coaching from former NHL and college players. And so we were doing a little bit of it on our own, just trying to stay in shape and work on your skills over the summer, and then crank it back up in the fall when you got back to Mankato.
So would you train back home here in Little Falls, or would you work out mostly in Mankato?
I did a little bit of both. I was back and forth different summers. Worked still at the golf course for my summer job all the time, both in Little Falls and in Mankato. So I would split time and then try to play out of some college leagues in St. Cloud as well as Mankato.
Now, after you graduated, a young new coach came into Little Falls by the name of Tony Kuchar. And I understand you got a chance to meet and work with Tony a little bit. Just tell us about that.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't get to play for Tony. I wish I did, but became good friends with him, and he invited me to help him run hockey camps. So the first 2 weeks of the summer, I would come back to Little Falls and help him with those camps. And it was a great experience to be able to work with young kids, pass along kind of what I've learned about the game and pass along my passion for the game to new young ones. And then there was some young fellas by the family names of Fesslers and Hanowskis, as we saw, as mites at the time, and then be able to keep in touch with them and watch their careers as they grew into just, superstar players. I think it's maybe time for those families to start having more kids come through the program, right? So we can keep hitting the state tournaments and watch them. But, it was good flyer pride that we would watch with as these teams started getting really good and going for state championships down there at the state tournament.
So do you get a chance to watch Flyer teams play at all today, or when they're in the metro area, or does your own personal hockey schedule just not allow for that to happen?
Occasionally, but it's not very often, like you said, due to either my football schedule and then my kids' own hockey schedules. We even try to get down to Mankato for a game or two, and it's usually after our Viking season is done. We'll try to get down for an alumni weekend or something. We'll try to stay connected to that program. as well.
Well, Chad, you obviously have had a number of firsts throughout your career. The first game in the X, the first game at Mankato, dealing with the Vikings, with the first game in US Bank, and all the work that you put into getting that new training facility set up there at TCO complex. It's pretty amazing. And then to think back to you playing all these outdoor games, it's really a unique perspective that you've brought to our viewers to be able to understand what some of those early days were like. And boy, I'm jealous that I wasn't at that game in '93 to see that comeback. That would have been a lot of fun to watch. And from my role in Flyer Media Productions, that would have been an awesome game to cover if live streaming were one of the deals back then. But it's been so cool just to get to know you a little bit here and catch up and let our Flyer fans and viewers learn what you're up to today, both on a professional side, but also that you're still actively involved in coaching. I guess I just have one last question for you, Chad. As you think back over your time playing in Little Falls, what did it mean to you to put on that Flyer jersey?
Yeah, I think there's a real sense of pride. And like I said before, it was we were part of that era before we were, really competitive in the conference. But we knew we had played outdoor hockey, and we kind of held that as a sense of pride for us too. Both for organized, but also like just for playing pickup. There was almost like a subculture of this group of like all of us kids that would meet at the rink. And you have to remember, this is before cell phones and texting, get a group chat going. And so we would use the landline and call and organize a game. And, parents would drop you off at the North End rink with a lunch for the day. This is back in the day where you could get away with that and you leave your kid alone all day long. We even joked in our family with the old guy who was in charge of the warming house, Herbie, was kind of like my grandpa. He helped raise me during those 3 months a year of the year when you could play hockey at the North End. And we had, the usual suspects of families that we would call and get there and play. So it was cool to then play other sports as well in the off seasons and develop your athletic skills that way. And, be a multi-sport athlete. And so for me, that was football, hockey, golf. And then, we grew up in a great neighborhood that played outside all the time. Your parents had to beg you to come in. So it was basketball and baseball, and we water skied up at the lake, and just everything you could do all day long, we would do it and try to become a better athlete and just have fun doing it. So you don't have to play one sport every day, all year round, to still be a good athlete. So I like to share that with the kids these days.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you look at a lot of the top athletes that have come out of Little Falls. They've not been one sport athletes. They've been multi-sport athletes, and that's an important message I think for kids to remember these days. Well, Chad, I just have one last question for you. It just dawned on me. When you were in Little Falls, it was purple and gold. When you were in Mankato, it was purple and gold. You're at the Vikings, it's purple and gold. Is your daughter's team purple and gold too?
Yeah, it's crazy. Every team I've ever been a part of is purple and gold. And so, came up here to work with the Vikings after all those things. And then sure enough, I got married to my beautiful wife, Lindsay. And where did we land? In Chaska, Minnesota. And the Hawks are purple and gold. So it's just meant to be. It's good for the wardrobe because we can just wear everything's purple and gold and you're all set.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, it's great to know that you bleed purple, both in all aspects of your athletic and professional careers. So, Chad, it's been great catching up with you. We really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today, and we hope to someday see you around the rink here in Little Falls.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Go Flyers, go Mavericks, and Skol.
All right. That's Chad Lundeen, class of '93. Thanks again, Chad, for joining us.
Yeah.